Hello, friends, and welcome to Pod Return to the Waking Sands. We are a Final Fantasy XIV companion podcast where we explore the lore and story of Hydaelyn and beyond. My name is Jen, and I'm joined by my co-host, and re-host.
What is going on here?
I fucked up the word.
Levi.
I'm joined by my co-host and researcher. Hi, Levi.
Hi, Jen.
How's it going?
Great, because today we are picking up where we left off, and we are going to play through the upcoming investigation in Camp Drybone.
Yeah. Investigation number... Oh my god. Investigation number 1 as a fresh scion.
Yes.
Very important.
But first, what happened last time, Jen?
Last time, we made our way to the Waking Sands at the behest of Ida and Papalymo, and I guess Momodi, to speak with the antecedent, Minfilia, the head of the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, figure out what their operation was all about, and join up. And we met all of the Scions, of course, yes.
Of course.
Yes.
We played some icebreaker games.
Mm-hmm, like pass the ball.
Introduce the person.
Yeah. I'm Thancred. I'm going to introduce you to Y'shtola. Y'shtola hails from Charlie and blah, blah, blah.
We are right now at the Scions headquarters, the Waking Sands. Thancred briefs us on the goings-on today. The deal is that we are going to, as our first mission, investigate the case of the missing elemental crystals and the abductions happening in eastern Thanalan.
Yeah.
And although these events seem to be separate, Thancred believes them to be connected.
100%. Yes. And I'm inclined to agree with him.
So the caravans that are being attacked belong to the Amalj'aa and Sons concern. Thancred says, they're rich, they can hire more guards, they don't need us especially, so we're going to worry about the abductions right now, because no one's going to pay to investigate the common folk of Nald'thal and Thanalan.
These are the poor people, refugees, lowborn, the people that society just kind of looks over.
Right. So we head to Camp Drybone to investigate. Camp Drybone is in eastern Thanalan. It's a scrubby desert with massive tendrils of orange corrupted crystals that erupt from the ground in the far east. The camp itself is built into a hollow in the ground and the surrounding caves. It's very near to Amalj'aa territory, but honestly, it doesn't seem that defensible to me because there's a big hole in the ground.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no defenses on the perimeter.
Literally anybody walking up immediately has the high ground.
Yep.
Great.
It's over
like
Camp
shooting
Drybone.
Fish in a barrel. Like shooting chocobos in a barrel. Like shooting Sahagin in a barrel. There we go.
Escalated quickly.
Well, I was trying to figure out, I could say this, but there's got to be
They have fish too, They're called fish.
Like shooting full moon sardines in a barrel.
Thank you. There's a nearby church up a hill to the west. This is the Church of Saint Adama Landama, a wealthy philanthropist that gave away so much money that he was sainted by the Order of Nald'thal.
That's all it takes, folks.
There's also a legend of him saving his hometown with only his wits and his wealth. Which,
I was going to say, with what, a bag of cash?
Yeah, pretty much.
Swinging it around.
It doesn't really seem that legendary to buy your way out of a problem.
And also, he is, in very good company. Like, why this guy and not myriad other wealthy folk in Nald'thal? What made him so special? Was he the first?
He gave away money.
Oh.
So that's why he's a saint.
That's fair.
Anyway, we meet our contact, Isambard. He's a bearded heer wearing the traditional open-chested Ul'dah garb.
Hot, because it's hot out.
Or cool, because it's got a nice chest vent.
Right.
The chest window, as it were.
Love a deep V.
Don't get too excited, Jen.
No promises.
Isambard is the unofficial people's representative in Camp Drybone. He's a trusted person by the non-military, non-business interests.
Yeah, which kind of... That's all the people that hang out in Drybone, pretty much. Maybe some military folk. Maybe some Immortal Flames.
There's a whole Immortal Flames camp here to defend the eastern part of Thanalan from the Amalj'aa. And also there are several merchant interests here too, because Camp Drybone is on the road between Gridania and Nald'thal. So it's a common stopping point for merchants and other travelers.
Yeah, there's a little shop there with lots of expensive armor and sundries and things. There's an inn. There's a bar. It's pretty well appointed.
So Minfilia gave Isambard a heads up that we'd be coming by, and also warned him and his people to be wary of the Amalj'aa lizard people. They are the current number one suspects.
So Isambard says, right now what we have is it's not a caravan, but just like a cart with church collars, they call them, that we're heading to the church, obviously, simply to pay their respects to the dead. But on their way there, they got intercepted by Amalj'aa and they were all killed. So now he's asked us to go and fetch their bodies so that they can be interred, which is a sad task, but we comply. And we go out there and we see the cart tipped over. It's a mess. 3 bodies lying there. And as we approach...
Excuse me, Jen. 3 ripe corpses.
That's right. Go get the ripe corpses. They're very pungent. I don't know. Ripe. Yeah, it seemed like a very macabre adjective. So we go out, approach the corpses, and that's when 2 Amalj'aa appear, and we fight the Amalj'aa and take the corpses back to... we take them back to Isambard? Yeah,
yes.
we return to Isambard,
Yep.
yeah. Be like, look it! No, we don't.
No, we don't.
We're respectful.
We are respectful.
Yes.
And then after we make our inroads, then the investigation can start in full.
I mean, obviously, the Amalj'aa are involved. However, the Amalj'aa fucking with people in Thanalan is not new. What is new is that the number of missing people is beyond anything they've ever experienced, which leads Isambard to believe that maybe something else is going on here. Some other party is involved. There's some greater plot at hand.
It's an inside job.
Of course, yeah. Magitek fuel can't melt steel beams. He's like, maybe you should speak to Ungust. He's a guy, he just kind of hangs around. He's a bit of a roughneck and a bit of a douchebag, but he knows a lot about the people here.
He's a merchant.
Well, not a roughneck.
A rough character
is
how he's described.
Yeah, rough character. Okay. Rough character and a douchebag. And he's probably not going to want to talk to you, but he's going to know the most about like what's going on in Drybone and surrounding areas. So start there. He's probably in the bar spending the day's wages on drink.
We get a letter of introduction from Isambard, and we head to the tavern where we find this guy, Ungust, drunk at the bar.
Oh, hey, look, it's that fucking Brillo Mohawk motherfucker that we embarrassed in Nald'thal. He was trying to accost that poor maiden about stolen dodo meat. And we're like, no, sir. Not on my watch. And there he is at the bar. And he's like, fucking you? You again? Then we give him Isambard's letter. And he's like, okay.
Do you know for sure that's him? Because...
Oh, yes.
He didn't have a name. He didn't have a name in that cutscene.
He did not. But he references that exact thing. Like, you again. It's the same. You who blah, blah, blah. And Nald'thal. It's him.
Okay.
He's the only person in the game with that fucking facial hair and haircut combo. Nobody else in the game will ever have that hair.
He also brags about how he's exploited people here for labor.
Right. It's so easy because they're super poor. And all of these constant Amalj'aa attacks have made them really nervous. On top of that, they're just straight up bitter at their life circumstances. So super easy to take advantage of these people. Have a good night.
So his advice was to go and talk to people.
Yeah. Well, at first he says, honestly, I think that, there's a lot of missing people, but this is a very transitional area. People come and go all the time. I'm sure they just decided to leave. Like, oh, okay. Probably not, but huh.
We ask around and all we learn is that people are scared. That's the hot word on the streets.
Yeah. They don't want to talk to us, really.
So, dead end, we go back to Isambard. The next lead is to go and ask around at the church.
Right.
Isambard gives us an embalmed corpse to carry up to the church with us, and so we trek up the hill. The church itself is a pretty conventional small-town church, just made of sandstone versus wood. And it's surrounded by a massive graveyard. Mm-hmm. And these bodies are mostly from the Calamity. It became actually more of like a place of mourning instead of like a place of worship of the saint after the Calamity because of all the people that died and then were buried here. So we trek up to the church and talk to the gravekeeper Marquez.
Because Isambard's idea is that, in times of trouble, people typically will turn to their gods and to their religion for advice, for succor, and thinks, you know what, people are going to be expressing their feelings to the clergy. I think that makes a lot of sense to go talk to them. And that, yeah, spot on, man.
Our contact first, though, is just the graveyard keeper, grave tender.
Grave tender sounds appropriate, but we give him the embalmed corpse to bury.
So Marquez is a Hewer with a trim white beard and mustache. He's dressed very unremarkably in his plain brown robes and hood, but if you peek under his hood, you can see some techie-looking goggles on his forehead.
Odd style choice.
Yeah, weird. But anyway, he has us bury the body up at a prepared gravesite up on a cliffside. Very scenic.
Yeah, he's just like, we don't have a lot of empty spots. So many bodies have been showing up lately. I know of one, you can use that one.
Then he points us to a Sister Orson for answers.
Yeah, apparently she's a favorite with the people, at least to do their confessing and their praying. She's the go-to.
Marquez doesn't know anything himself, and he acts very confused and disoriented during this conversation. Also weird, but whatever. We press on to the sister who's inside the church. She also doesn't know anything pertinent, but she mentions that she receives confessions from the townspeople all the time.
Mm-hmm.
She also tells us a bit about Marquez, though. He's an odd fellow that was traumatized by the calamity, and apparently his weird mannerisms offended Thancred when Thancred was asking around here earlier on.
No idea, but yeah, Thancred was offended by his conduct, quote unquote. Seems a little intense, but okay.
Ultimately, another dead end, so we head back down the slope and back to Isambard. When we get back there, we're intercepted by Thancred.
Yeah.
He's spent some time himself working on the merchant Ungust, and he's concluded that people here will only reveal their secrets to people who are of a religious order.
Right.
So he's very suspicious of Sister Orson.
Right, because that's a really incredible opportunity. You have access to a lot of people. You're kind of out of eyesight, or out of sight of a lot of peering eyes. It's like the perfect cover. So as far as a theory goes, it's not entirely unsound. But Isambard is like, the fuck you say? Sister Orson? Of all the people you could possibly insinuate is involved, there's no way Sister Orson. And he's like, every rose, though beautiful, has its thorns. So just keep an eye on her, will ya?
Thancred also mentions that Marquez looks oddly familiar.
Weird.
I can't tell if it's just trying to set something up for the future, or if it's trying to point suspicion at Marquez, because he keeps on being like a weird character and people keep talking about him. So I wonder if the game is trying to make us suspect him.
Possibly. I mean, he doesn't communicate very. Yeah, he still seems like he's suffering the ill effects of PTSD from the calamity. We don't know really anything about him. He's very mysterious, just by default, with the robe and the hood.
We know as long-term players why they're making such a big deal out of Marquez, but as first-timers, I wonder if you're supposed to be suspicious of him, because we've had 3 different Marquez's weird interactions in a short space. And if this were not a longer-term story, but just the story of the investigation of the kidnappings in Camp Drybone, then that would be some heavy kind of seeding of suspicion for this person.
Very much so. And I remember doing this the first time. I was, because Thancred was like, you know what, keep an eye on that Sister Orson. I'm like, oh yeah, man, totally. And you don't know who to trust. Anybody could be involved at this point, because I'm fresh and new. I'm fresh off the chocobo cart.
Isambard doesn't want to believe Thancred's suspicions about the sister, but he does mention that she does sometimes travel alone up to the Golden Bazaar. And there's an urchin up there that she favors, who we might be able to interrogate from some details.
Cool. Let's go find this kid. Uncombed urchin is his name.
The one with the messy hair. The Golden Bazaar is a former waypoint on the way between Gridania and Ul'dah, but it was surpassed by newer settlements that were located more conveniently, such as Camp Drybone. And so they rendered the bazaar all but a ghost town, because, it's all the way up in a corner by the mountains. It's kind of a pain to get to.
It is a pain to get to.
I'm not sure why they chose to make that their waypoint, but whatever.
Well, I mean, you see how it's positioned. It's kind of up and around in this like horseshoe kind of shaped cavern. So I'm guessing from like a defensibility standpoint, it's pretty good.
Well, it's more defensible than Camp Drybone, for sure.
See?
It's not a cavern, though. It's more of like a canyon.
Yeah.
Either way, though, it's seen some new life recently because there are rumors now of mithril veins in the area. And also, there is a lost invisible city nearby. The invisible city is a set of stone ruins that were recently unearthed by the Calamity. Some scholars believe that the city is actually the tomb of the Beladian Sultan Lalafuto IV.
Big if true.
Big if true. Today, the bazaar is a very lonely feeling settlement with crumbling walls and aged-looking structures. We find the unnamed and uncombed urchin, who is currently very distraught because Sister Orson has gone out on her own and has not come back for a while.
He's talking to a bunch of other kids, and he's like, oh my god, Sister Orson, she left to go find my shiny thing, and she hasn't come back, and this place is just crawling with dangerous crap, so please go look for her and make sure she's okay. So we do that. We go look for Sister Orson. And she is just outside the gates to the Golden Bazaar, surrounded by a couple of undead. So we jump to help her, kill the undead, so they are super dead, and save her. And These
are undead from the ruins.
And they had her surrounded. So we dispatch them pretty quickly and save her. And she was able to find the uncombed urchins, he shall be nameless, found his ring, which apparently was, it used to belong to his parents. So pretty important for him. And she was very nice to go out and risk her life to find this heirloom. So after all of this, I mean, it's pretty clear that Sister Orson is no longer a person of interest.
Yes. The sister is so holy and pure that she does church work on her off time.
She's not a murderer. She's not stealing people away.
Yes. So she's off the list. Cross her off the list of suspects. We get back to Isambard, and we learn that Thancred has gone out into the desert to go and spy on some Amalj'aa camps. So we get sent out after him to go give him some backup.
Backup is a very diplomatic way of saying that he sends us in alone.
Yeah, so we get there and he's like, oh, good, you're here. So now you can go in there and you can go investigate the camp.
I'm not really inclined to proceed any further. If you could just go on in there and look for clues, that'd be great. Like, all right, Thancred, you coward.
So we fight our way through the Amalj'aa camp.
Do we? Or do we stealthily serpentine our way through the Amalj'aa like a mysterious wind and escape without a scratch?
What level is your character, Jen?
Oh, I didn't aggro anybody.
What level is your character?
32.
And they're like 19?
Yeah.
Mystery solved. Serpentine that, Jen.
Yeah. Shut up.
Anyways,
I'm super
fight
good
our
at
way
sleuthing.
through, or we exercise our high level privilege.
Super good at sleuthing.
Depending on the case, through this camp, which is this kind of like rocky ravine that's full of crude, rough metal structures.
It's all, salvage.
They forge their own shit, and all the Amalj'aa architecture is just big, blocky, brutish pieces of metal.
Yeah. I wouldn't. It's not really brutalism, but no. I'm just saying, like, if we had to assign an aesthetic to it, if we had to label it, it's like, I don't know, if Chris Angel were a blacksmith. Some people will get that, I suppose.
We find in the camp there is a note that we recover, and it is a terribly written note, either by the Amalj'aa or some very illiterate person. But it's masquerading, though, as a religious pamphlet by some priest of Nald'thal that is offering free jobs to the poor.
Free jobs! Come get your free jobs!
So we're going to bring that back to Sister Orson to have her take a look. But before we do, though, Jen, I just want to mention there's a cool landmark out here that's easy to miss if you don't do side questing. One of the big plant-covered goopoos has descended from the mountains and died in the desert. Mm-hmm. And you can find its body on the western lip of the big canyon that runs its way through the area. It's brought all these foreign plants with it, and you can find the body, and they've sprouted out of the body, and it's covered in these foreign exotic flowers and vines and all this stuff.
It's not even like an oasis. It's super weird. It's like a tiny bit of rainforest.
Well, they're feasting on its body directly is what's happening. So the nutrients and moisture in the goo poo are keeping them alive.
It's like an artificial reef.
But there's a botanist there
mm-hmm.
who is very concerned about keeping this thing going. So he tries to rope you into caretaking for the goo poo garden and eradicating pests and so on to try and keep it going for longer.
This is a side quest you can pick up in Drybone. I think it's like a level maybe 16, 17 type of side quest. Then you go out there and help the guy. And until I picked up that side quest, I had no idea that area was there. It's really cool. You just see this kind of broken down, actively rotting corpse of a goo-boo, but it's like surrounded by gorgeous plants. It's really interesting.
Yeah, good stuff. We show the pamphlet to Orson, who is currently recuperating in the inn after her undead attack. And she says the leaflet is nothing but blasphemous slander. But she does mention, though, that some garments have gone missing from the church recently. We realize, us and Thancred and Eisenberg, realize that maybe someone from outside the church is posing as a clergy member and luring victims out of the town that way.
Yeah, that totally follows. So now we have a false priest to find. And Thancred shows up and he's like, guys, I have an idea. So how about we dress up like the poor and, run around Drybone and ask people like, you got any work for me? You got any work for me? And just kind of make a ruckus so that the person who's doing this gets wind of like a new batch of refugees or whatever that are around looking for work. And that will just kind of lure him in. And that's a really great idea. Eisenberg gives us like a bunch of filthy poor person clothes. And so that we can start on this mission to just run around Drybone and make these kind of like false inquiries. So we do.
Right. So we dress up in these slops and we hassle a bunch of local officials for work. And they all turn us down very rudely.
Well, yeah, so people they're not receptive to us, which is enlightening. We ask, I think, 4 different people. They're either dismissive or they are opportunists to proselytize to us. He wasn't rude. He was just trying to convert us, I guess. And then, or they're just really just downright rude.
Right. And a few of them yelled at us to go out of town and go hang out with the other poors at this like campsite over by a muddy pond.
Yeah, go hang out with your buddies at that muddy pond north of Sandgate or whatever. I'm like,
So no luck finding the false priest in town, but we report back to Thancred and we convene and compare notes. He has the idea of us going out to this camp out by the lake. We can maybe find this person out there. So we head out. It's out in eastern Thanalan. It's a muddy pond. Yeah, honestly,
calling it a lake is very generous.
Not a lot of people out there, though. Anyway, we go out there and hang out by the lake, looking the part as best we can, until a person wearing priest's clothes comes up to us. He asks us if he can do us the service of giving us a job.
Right. Like, oh, my poor children, no one should live like you are living. I'm like, wow, way to assume. But yeah, so our fucking bait worked.
Thancred busts him. It's Ungust, the same mohawked D-bag from the tavern earlier.
Yeah, he calls him out immediately, like, you fucking idiot.
And then Ungust replies with this whole sob story about him being from the
hurt me.
Golden Bazaar, and then the Amalj'aa were going to attack the city, but he worked out a deal where if he were just to give them some tip-offs on some merchant caravans and maybe a few captives he lured out of the city on false pretenses, then they wouldn't attack the Golden Bazaar. Oh, and also he got paid fat stacks of cash too.
Right.
For his trouble.
So his initial argument is like, I'm doing this for the good of my people. And Thancred is like, uh-huh. And then, oh, well, the money was real good too. Aha! Fucking asshole. So Thancred is like, there's nothing you could say that I would believe. So I'm just going to hang out here with our friend. Yeah, me and Ungust are going to hang out a bit here at the Muddy Pond. If you can apprise Minfilia of what's been going on, that'd be great. So back to the Waking Sands we go.
And that's where we'll leave off today. We have found the culprit, and we are ready to set plans in motion to find the captives who've already been abducted.
Yeah, that's our mission now, to try to find these people before they get killed or whatever.
So, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about this bit of story?
Oh, it's very intriguing. It's an excellent little mystery plot. It's also, you get a little bit more flavor with regards to Thanalan and the relationship with the Order of Nald'thal and the Amalj'aa, and just a little bit more insight into the community of Camp Drybone. And so of course, just because it's in the vicinity of Ul'dah doesn't mean that everybody is Ul'dan in the way that they approach life and the pursuit of happiness or whatever. Yeah, I like that they brought back Brillo Mohawk guy. I'm sure we'll see more of him. I just have a feeling. And hopefully we can do some good.
Great.
Yeah.
Very succinct.
Not really.
I think that the investigation here is surprisingly good. Unfortunately, this is not an actual investigation game.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you really have to, create a story that is followable by literally anybody who wants to play the game. So introducing, like a little bit of a whodunit, like side quest, those are typically more open and more freeform.
There are, later in the game, there are other mysteries that we solve, and we do have the option where it says, okay, so what do you think? And there are usually 3 answers. One of them is the right one, and 2 are the wrong one. You can answer whatever you want to, and the story goes on regardless. If you don't get it right, then someone else will say, actually, you're wrong because of this.
Sure. Yeah. This might be a little too early. The developers may have thought that it's a little too early to introduce that sort of, freedom with the plot. And also your world at this stage is very small, because you don't have a mount. It's hard. You haven't unlocked a lot of areas.
I think even despite the fact that it's more of a detective story that you are witnessing, functionally speaking, than actually solving a mystery. Yeah. I still think it's very good. Because it has a good amount of time in terms of the fact-finding phase, where you are chasing down leads and hitting dead ends, but you are still picking up clues that all come together. Like the actual guy in the end, the seeds for the culprit, were planted at the very beginning. And it seems like he's just some asshole, sure, but he does make reference. He makes a comment about how he exploited some workers for his own gain when you first meet him. Yeah. And he has planted the seeds story-wise that, yes, he was the culprit, though you don't have the clues or the context at that time to realize that he's done so.
Right. It feels like you do enough legwork. As someone who can't go and just freely ask questions and collect information, I mean, you're still you're on rails on this, but when you arrive at a conclusion, you still feel like, you got there, like you were part of it. You were a big enough part of that process to feel like you also could have arrived at that conclusion independently.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think it's good. I think it's a very good investigation story, especially for like earlier Realm Reborn, where the storytelling is pretty much a mixed bag. Yeah. But yeah, I like this part quite a bit.
Oh, totally. Because you're just opening up this entire world and following these mysteries, and it just gets you.
Well, frankly, for me, I'm having more fun the second time through than the first time, because I was still in just fiction, noun, whatever shock mode, where I couldn't parse what was relevant and what was not relevant because the game moves at such a fast pace. Honestly, for how long it takes to get through a Realm Reborn, the game itself just goes at a very brisk clip, and it's hard to know what to pay attention to and what not to the first time. Yeah. So now it's been long enough for me where I can't remember all the details, So, like, I couldn't recall who the culprit was. Like, I was rediscovering the person behind the abductions in this scenario.
Yeah.
But I also knew, okay, so I remember this leads to the trial that we'll have next time. And I knew, like, the whole setup overall in a big enough sense. And I'm far less overwhelmed now than the first time with the overall concepts being thrown my way. So I can actually focus more on the story details.
Yeah, it's definitely a richer experience this time. But, hopefully with some of this info, if this is your first time playing, it helps you feel a little bit more enriched, I guess.
Also, Jen, if you are so inclined to side quest, every time you go to one of these regional hubs here, like the church and the Golden Bazaar, those all have a collection of side quests there that take place in the vicinity, and then they'll give you a quest that sends you back to Drybone. So it is conceptually organized well in that you could say, okay, I'm going to go to the church and ask around about this culprit, but also do some graveyard chores there. And then you get sent back to Drybone. So you can do the side quests alongside the main quest. However, unfortunately, though, the quality is pretty low overall. There's like at the church, you can kill some clouds of flies. You can pick up some garbage for the church.
Yeah, they're usually really superficial.
It's a good structure having these kind of side quest hubs. It's just that, unfortunately, the rewards for them are minimal and the story is next to non-existent.
Yeah, and then it's just, we get a little bit of money and a little bit of XP. So if you're doing these side quests, at around the level, like if your level is about the same level as these side quests, I would say they're totally worth doing. Because then you can bolster your own coffers and then gain a little bit of extra XP and then also just a little extra flavor. Always good.
Well, the one big one, though, is getting pointed to that Goopoo graveyard. Anyway, any other thoughts, Jen?
Nah.
Next time, we are going to explore the Amalj'aa optional dungeon. What?
It's optional. Nothing is optional. Well,
whatever.
Almost everything's optional.
I recommend doing all of the optional dungeons. I find them fun.
They're totally fun.
And also they will enrich your dungeon roulette when you start to run roulettes later on, or now, whatever. Anyway, that's it. See you next time for some Amalj'aa.
Well, that will do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening, you guys. We really appreciate it. If you have need to get in touch with us, you can at podreturnffxiv@gmail.com. And we will see you next time.